Welcome back to the Truth About Child Loss podcast. I am one of your hosts, Sam Pierce, and
I'm your other host, Ron Pierce. How's everybody doing?
Everybody, I'm sure, is just fine. Today, we are going to recap what we've been doing since we were last together. So the last time you heard from Ron and I was in the end of 2019. And we did a recap of season 1, but you haven't heard from us together since then. So the two of us wanted to get together and do some updates. It's been a weird time, So Ron and I are just going to discuss that for a little while and then talk about the things that we've been doing within Christian Jaden Project since then. So Ron, what's happened since the last time we were together? What's one of the big things you think has happened since we were together?
The pandemic.
The pandemic.
That's probably the biggest. It's affected everything. So, it's to say what's one thing. It's a bunch of stuff to happen. we could go into a bunch of stuff, but yeah, the pandemic is probably the preeminent situation that has occurred.
Yeah. So with the pandemic, and our topic is child loss. So when you think about the pandemic and how that would affect our families who have suffered a loss, maybe we're relying on certain services, do any thoughts come to your mind about that?
Muted. Sorry, I muted myself. I'm quite sure there were some things that has happened because of the pandemic. When you consider, I've never given this thought. I'm literally formulating this thought like in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine being a family that needed the resources that we needed for what we went through during the pandemic, like at this time. It basically means that you pretty much have to wait a year. You pretty much had to wait, even if it wasn't a year, you have to wait an extended period of time before you could have anybody come see you, talk to you, and come give you that touch or those different touches that you need to succeed in attempting to move forward with any level of recovery from these types of situations. That's a tough. I couldn't imagine it, and I never thought about it until you just asked that question.
Right. So those are things that we don't think about because we're a little further along in our journey. But as you were saying that, and I haven't given it much thought either, but as you were saying that, I was thinking about when we went into group therapy. And could you imagine having that set up or being in the middle of a group when the pandemic hits? And we're a year into the pandemic, by the way. So we are in a groove of things at this point. But in the beginning, I just want to remind everybody, because again, this podcast is coming out a year after, and we're discussing this a year after. I just want to remind us that when the pandemic hit and the quarantine began, nobody really knew how long it would be for. Like nobody really knew, I think they were trying to shut us down for 2 weeks. If you recall, I think the school shut down. They said, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks. And then boom, we shut down indefinitely, until further notice. And it's like, nobody really knew how long we were going to be. So just think about having to go into a group therapy situation and then having it cut. Like we were just into the groove of things, getting into group therapy and really starting to connect. I couldn't imagine it being, so I wonder how those families are doing, and we should probably reach out to them. You have any thoughts on that?
And that's just the people that were actually in therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure that there were people who lost during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So, that being the case, where do those people even get the resources to get help? Because those folks aren't milling around the hospital. I doubt that even the photography folks were just, you know, in and out of the maternity wards like they were
Right.
when we were, you know, normal
Right.
prior to the COVID situation. So, I mean, it's a lot of things that truly you don't think about, especially in this type of situation. That when you really give it some real thought, it's like, wow, it kind of blows you away, because I'm literally sitting here like I never even almost gave that any thought, not from that standpoint.
Yeah.
So I just see a lack in a lot of the resources. Um, Even the people who might have had their say their therapies interrupted, it's probably still part of it is maybe they got something. I know they didn't get enough of it. Um, Also, I think there's something to be said about actually being in a setting as opposed to being at home over Zoom.
Right.
You know, sometimes to feel, because you know, if you on Zoom, you probably are going, you know, like mute your speaker, or you're gonna, you know, turn your camera off when you're having a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, because you're while you're in a group, you're still not in a group.
Right.
So you're at your home in your comfort zone, and you're like, oh, well, I don't want to mess up nobody else's flow today, so I'm just gonna turn my camera off. I don't feel like being bothered. Well, those layers are peeled away when you're sitting in a room across from other people with other losses, people bringing in their pictures of their kids and stuff like that, and you all have to sit and tell a story in the room. So that safety net is gone. So I think a part of it is the vulnerability that you have when you're in those types of settings, and you learn a lot and you grow a lot. And you know, that was for us over 11 12 years ago, and we still have those connections with those same people that we were in those rooms with.
Exactly. Exactly. So hopefully, um, I do know some of the therapists that kept the one-on-ones going over Zoom, and I'm pretty sure that that was helpful, especially through the OWN network, the Our Wellness Network, through Pregnancy and Infant Loss Committee. I know that those therapists were still working. I know a lot of other therapists that were still working. People really needed that that touch from therapists. So how do you think then grief, like let's just tease out all other things, we're not talking about therapy or anything, but how do you think grief was affected by the quarantine and the pandemic? You have any thoughts about that, babe?
I think that, to be honest with you, it's probably worse because it's compounded with a bunch of other things. It's compounded with um, sort of cabin fever, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're locked in. You can't go do a lot of the things that you are used to doing, or a lot of the things that you might want to go do. You can't go visit, you know, your grandma. You
Yeah.
can't go visit your mom. Uh, you know, so you don't have the same outlets. Yeah, you can call people and stuff like that, but in a lot of cases, especially in grief, you're in this tug of war between wanting to talk about it or wanting to bother other people with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, I would like to think that it probably just compounds the situation, because now you're kind of stuck. You know, I don't care how big your house is. I don't care how small your family is. When you're stuck around, you know, these folks for an extended period of time, it's like, go somewhere. So, you know, so you're dealing with
He's
that.
not saying he felt that about us, of course, you know, that
Not at all. But you know what I mean? It's
yep.
like you have because everybody in their house, I don't care, again, I don't care how big your house is, I don't care how small your family is, everybody has their corner of their house,
Yeah.
that they kind of want things to be a certain kind of way. So when those areas are kind of impeded on, or they're being explored by other people, you're kind of like, oh, you still here? You know what I mean? So you got to deal with that, just the stuff from the pandemic, the not going to work every day. Because again, I know that these aren't always healthy things, but in grief, you still got to get up and go to work after a certain period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But now you don't even have to get up and go to work. So you notice you can sleep. You're so exhausted emotionally, you can sleep. Well, now you might have a Zoom meeting or a phone call to make today, or just send in a couple emails and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
That's just going to drag that depression.
Yeah.
On and on and on.
Yeah, and to add to what you're saying, when we think about grief and the isolation that it causes, and then the quarantine that causes us to be even more isolated, it's like, yeah, I mean, just compounding grief. And then there's this, what we've learned since being in grief recovery together is that, grief isn't just death, it's a loss of normality even. And so the quarantine and pandemic took away everything. And so anyone who was suffering from the loss of a child at the time, or any other loss, I lost my dad right before the pandemic hit, before the quarantine. And so then using that as a segue into what are the positives of the quarantine, because I know that after losing my dad, one of the greatest positives that I got out of quarantine is that I didn't have to move. The world, usually in grief, and I'm going to be very explicit when I say this, when the twins passed away, I was pissed. I was pissed because the world kept moving and I was in a standstill.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking around like, oh, so y'all just gonna keep going? Y'all don't want to pause for a second? I mean, I'm really going through something here. And, during the pandemic, they forced us to be still. And, there came a moment, I mean, at first I was just like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? But then there just came a moment where I'm like, this is the stillness that I needed, actually. So let me just embrace it, try to get myself used to navigating this world without my father, And so I wonder then, like what your thoughts are on that and what other people might be feeling about what might have been a positive thing during the quarantine and the pandemic. What are your thoughts, babe?
I think that the isolation could be a gift and a curse. I just talked about the curse part of it, but the gift part is very much what you just said. I remember when my grandmother passed, I was in the Air Force, and I had to take leave, of course, to go home to be with my family and be at the funeral and all that stuff. And then once my leave was up, it was time to go back. And I remember I didn't go to work because I didn't go home right away. I think I had to wait a couple days before I could leave. So, like, even my mom and them had to push back the funeral because I couldn't come home I couldn't leave for almost like 4 days.
Yeah.
So, everybody was very, compassionate. Everybody was very, like, yo, sorry about your grandma, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. So take away that month that I was gone, home for the funeral and then home for Christmas and stuff. When I got back, all right, time to go to work.
Yeah.
Time to, you had your time off. The monthly reports are due. You got to still make your phone calls. You still got to, you're back in the Air Force again. And they're not looking for lags. They're not looking for, you to have emotional moments, emotional breakdowns. They're looking for me to run that whole warehouse like I had been running before my grandmother passed. Like that was their expectation. They didn't want, you couldn't come back in there. And again, this is a male charged environment as well. Can't come back in there like, man, I just had a moment, man. Just thinking about my grandma, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Wait, what? In the military, you have to call it military bearing. Nothing should shake you from what the course is. Yeah. So to have a situation like the pandemic happened and somebody passed away, like you said, your dad, and other life issues that are grief related, other losses that are grief related, to have the opportunity to not worry about having to go back to work, to not have to be bothered with somebody saying something silly about, whatever it is that you're going through, to not have to deal with that level of issue is something to be said about it, because that's a rare spot. Everybody else, 99% of us and 99% of the situations, you go back to work and you have to encounter all that bull crap while still going through whatever you're going through.
Yeah.
So again, it's a gift and a curse, because most of us get 3 days, I think, for a funeral.
And that's if it's somebody that's really close to you.
And that's only if they're close based on what the company says is close.
Exactly.
So it ain't even, it's not necessarily a best friend. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a cousin that you grew up with like a brother or a sister. It's, was it your mom? Was it your dad? Was it your brother? Was it your sister? Was it, it got to be somebody, your grandmother. It has to be those people, not necessarily uncles, not necessarily aunties and stuff like that. So, I mean, and they dictate that. It's not even what you dictated.
Yeah.
You could have been raised by your uncle for a part of your life. And they're like, yeah, but he's just your uncle.
Yeah.
Like there were people who said that about my grandmother. Like, oh, well, me and my grandmother didn't even get along.
But what does that have to do with anything that I'm saying to you right now? Like, yeah.
So yeah, it could be, so to not have to deal with that, to not have to be emotionally out of it, and then have to restrain yourself from killing somebody. They said something silly like that. Yeah, it was a gift and a curse.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have other children at the house, and so our house was busy. The kids had already been out of school because my dad passed away. So they were out of school 2 weeks before the school shut down. And so they just never went back, and we had to go back to the school, pick up more books, pick up more work for them. And it was just hectic. And so with that hecticness, and then you try to move through the motions of grief, I was thankful for the stillness, but I was really, really thankful when the weather broke.
Yeah, for sure.
Once the weather broke, and we're in Northeast Ohio. So once the weather broke, I mean, it was cold when the pandemic began in March. Mm-hmm. And when the weather finally broke, I'd say about the end of April, and we could actually branch out and be outside. Oh, what a blessing that was. And so one of the things that we did was, I'd love to hear from other people about what they did over, the warmer months. Nobody was spending money, right? So it's not like we were going out and, all the restaurants were closed, all the clubs were closed. You couldn't go anywhere. So we actually spent a good amount of money just fixing up the backyard, and making the backyard a place where you can go and be still and relax, and we live in a duplex where my mom lives on the other side. And so, we have a huge family here, and we could all just meet in the backyard. What, you have anything you want to say about that?
Well, no, I mean, I was quite pissed off. Actually, it was about a year ago today that the weather finally broke. Like I was so upset because, you couldn't even go sit on the front porch. It was
right.
It would be sunny outside, and then you walk outside and it's like you got this chill, this breeze coming let you know, no, you probably, like if I need a jacket on and all that and a hat, there's no point in going outside on the porch. I may as well just stay in the house. So it was about a year ago, maybe last week, a year ago, all of a sudden, it was like 75 and sunny or 80 and sunny for like 3 weeks straight. Like it was no rain. There weren't many clouds in the sky. And I mean, it was like awesome. It was almost like God was like, all right.
All right. All right. I was just playing with y'all.
So like, it was awesome. And I had just gotten a smoker. So I was like waiting on the weather to break to even try to do, like, because it just kept raining, kept being cold, kept being misty. Yeah. So I couldn't even really get out there into it. And so to be able to, just go walk down by the lake or walk around the corner or whatever and not have to worry about, whether it was going to rain on me or how far was I going to make it before I got too cold and had to come back.
Yeah.
It was great to have that. And then it turned into a really nice summer. It was a really nice summer. And we just started putting from the smoker to the fire pits. We bought 2 fire pits. I found a place up the street that was actually open and selling cigars. Thankfully, for those folks who like to indulge in libations, there was a lot of the liquor stores that were still open. I'm sure they did great business last year.
I feel like the only thing the state didn't close was the liquor.
No, they was making them taxes. They was getting them taxes. They was getting them taxes off that liquor sale.
Yeah.
Also, another good thing that came out of it was, for the first time since it came out, I actually got more than 1 bottle of Peach Crown. So that was dope.
That's right. It's so hard to find in the summertime. Why?
Man.
So let's take a quick break so that we can hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, then we'll start talking about what we've been doing with the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Committee. And we can talk a little bit about what the Wave of Light was like this year, which is really, really, well, I should say last year, was really different, again, because of pandemic. So let's just take this quick break, hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. I'm like, oh.
I want y'all to know he gets on my nerves. Okay, welcome back, y'all. So as we go into what we've been doing with the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Committee, I just wanted to remind you all what that committee is. It's a committee that sits under First Year Cleveland. Ron and I were participants as parents on the committee. One of the things that we are charged with as a family is that we are the main family voice. So sometimes when media is calling and they want to hear perspective from a mom or a dad, a lot of times they'll call us first, or one of the other parents. We sit on a committee with a couple of other parents. And then the society itself, we are in charge of putting on the Wave of Light, which is the candle lighting ceremony every October 15th. One of the things that was really, really strange for us this year, of course, is the candle lighting ceremony, the Wave of Light. Ron, do you want to describe what the Wave of Light is for those who may have forgotten? And then I'll talk a little bit about how we had to do it a little different last year, I should say.
Well, the Wave of Light is a candle lighting ceremony it's for the parents to remember their infant loss of a child. And in general, it's folks commune together and, they call out each baby's name. There's usually, like, for at least the ones I've participated in, there's a program beforehand, small program, nothing, elaborate. usually a speaker. And then they start to call out the names that have been registered. And each family comes up to the table, lights a candle for their child or children, depending on each case. And then, these things, the candles all across the world are lit starting at 7 o'clock. And it just, for that period of time, you got the candles lit all the way across the world.
Right. And what does it mean for you? We've been participating in a wave of light now since Christian and Jaden were born and passed. So what does it mean for you?
It's just another opportunity to, I guess, to publicly acknowledge the boys. And I say an opportunity to publicly acknowledge because, for me, I'm always, they're always somewhere with me or on me.
Yeah.
I always said that that's the way that I wanted it. I never wanted to forget or to try to push them, that memory away or whatever. I didn't want to bury it somewhere because I understand that, that it could be an issue.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's an everyday thing, but the wave of light is just that public opportunity to hear your child's name called, to hear your child's name being said in a public setting, because we won't get a chance to hear them at sporting events, graduations, or any other, let's be honest, at court proceedings. None of that. So
my husband, I'm telling y'all.
I mean, let's not act like everybody's kid was going to be, and every court proceeding ain't a bad thing either.
This is true. This is true.
You know what I mean? But it's just an opportunity to hear your child's name being called by somebody other than you, and that's a huge thing in itself.
Yeah.
To hear somebody else say your child's name, it's almost like validation that they existed.
Agreed. And so when the pandemic hit, I got to shout out Sabrina and Tracy. Sabrina Roberts, Tracy Carter, they were the co-chairs of the PALE committee. They reached out to me early on and said, well, it's not like the wave of light ain't gonna happen. We just got to figure it out. So now we got to look at what the wave of light is going to be in a virtual setting. And I was like, virtual, like how we do that? Because again, I mean, think about this now. We've been going to this wave of light for 11 years, 10 years, because that was our 11th one. And every time we were together, we were in the room, we were lighting a candle. It's part of being in the space that makes the wave of light so special, and so to even think about it being a virtual setting was kind of mind-boggling. But I think even more mind-boggling was the thought that we couldn't have one. And so I just got to shout them out because they were like, oh, we're going to have the wave of light, but we're going to figure out how to do it virtually so that, we keep everybody safe. So here we are, we're getting ready to plan this wave of light. The committee gets together, we start doing the plans and we start to figure out how to get it all recorded, pre-recorded, and do the candle lighting itself in a virtual setting. We had to pick out what the parents picked out these beautiful, beautiful lanterns. And we had to figure out how to get the candles to the families ahead of time, all of that. And so, this is how I met Devin Collins. He sat on the committee doing the toxic film, which we'll talk about in a few. But he really got to know me during this time because now we're about to do the wave of light together because he's in charge of videotaping everything. So now he's getting all the stories together. He's really working on each parent that sits on the committee, recording them, recording the children and their perspectives and everything like that. So we, that Wave of Light, it was truly something special. It is still visible to anyone who wants to see it. And may I just say that it turned out to be absolutely beautiful. So we put together a lovely program that was pre-recorded. We all participated, myself, Ron, our children, the other committee members, their children, their spouses. We all participated. Ron, what was it like going into the studio to record? I mean, it's totally different because Ron has done, we both have, but Ron has done both, actually hosting and speaking in front of the people. And he's also done the, pre-recorded. So tell me what that was like for you.
It was different, but I don't think it was, because I've done it before. So for me, it was just a different way of doing it. It was necessary, especially if you're gonna go and do the virtual situation. I think I liked it. I liked the setup of it, the interview part of it. It was different because of what, the last Wave of Light, I was basically the moderator, at a certain point anyway. I called off the names and stuff. So it was different to actually it felt more like a panel type of thing. We've been on a lot of different panels for this cause. So I wasn't taken aback. It didn't make me feel too different. Because we've done radio, we've done TV, we've done, all different kinds of mediums. So it was just kind of like we got another interview. Okay, cool.
Right. We've done podcasting, we've done it all. Yeah. For me, I think it was just different. But again, we are so used to going with the flow. And may I just point out here that when you lose children, children, when you miscarry, when you have a stillborn, anything, you're kind of forced in a situation where now you're kind of going with different flows and trying to just navigate. And this situation was not very different from that. So yeah, we got to do it a little different. Thankfully, we had the money to do it. The committee, we had already secured money to put it on, and we had already decided what the candles would look like. We could put together a really nice program. We involved the children. This year's Wave of Light was supposed to be from the kids' perspective. So the first year we did it, the ladies handled everything. The second year, the men handled everything. And then last year, it was supposed to be the kids handling everything. Well, guess what? The kids still handled everything because we still had the kids in the live portion. So we had the video, the pre-recorded program, and then we went into a live feed to call each baby by name. And guess what? The children handled that. So, and the children meaning the older children, because my 10-year-olds, I didn't put them on the microphone to call names, but it still was very heavily in the children's perspective. So we were really pleased with it. It went on, we were able to get a lot of people their candles ahead of time, but some people called for them after, and it aired live on YouTube. The link is still there. It's still active. You can always go back to look at it. Maybe I'll put it in the comments in the YouTube video, and maybe I'll link it on the website as well. But so the Wave of Light did happen, and the Wave of Light turned out to be very beautiful. So what does that mean for the Wave of Light 2021? We really don't know. The world is starting to open up now. So it'll be very interesting to see what we do. I think it's still going to be kind of a hybrid situation where we'll probably live stream it and have minimal people in the room. It probably won't be as big as it was. So the first year that we put it on, we honored 66 babies. And then the second year, we called by name pre-registered babies 101. And then there are people also in the audience who lined up to have their babies called because they didn't register. And then this year, because it was virtual, we called 200 names. And I think that that's a huge thing because it was virtual, it wasn't just Northeast Ohio people. We had people across the country registered for this. And so we called babies from California, from Arizona, and we were floored. We were very honored to be able to service families from so far away. So I think that the Wave of Light was beautiful, but do you want to give an opinion on how it all turned out, Ron?
I think it was as successful as the other ones. And this was another situation where you can say that the pandemic was kind of a gift and a curse.
Yeah.
It's kind of a curse because, of course, you're trapped inside. You don't know if you can have something like this, and what will happen if this thing goes away. We kind of gathered some momentum. You go from under 100 people to under 100 babies to over 100 babies.
Mm-hmm.
So going into the third year, this thing happens, the pandemic happens. So now if we don't do anything, it kind of stagnates. Now you have to go back and reach out and try to hope that these folks are still even interested, because I'll be honest with you, the emotions of child lost parents are everywhere. Mm-hmm. So something that they're okay with this year, they may completely and totally be turned off by. And it could be something simple as, well, I wanted to do it last year and you guys weren't there, so I'm done now. Like, done.
Yep.
And it ain't even personal. It'll just be how they feel. So to be able to find a way to put something together and then double the participation in terms of the child names anyway, was incredible. And yeah, we were able to reach a little bit further. So the gift and the curse part was, or the gift part of this was not just the number of participants, but now you have an opportunity to potentially do something countrywide, nationwide. Whereas before we were just looking at it from a local standpoint, and we can still do the local.
Yeah.
And virtually include folks from everywhere. And it's not about, just so folks don't get it twisted, this isn't about popularity. This isn't about all that. I'm saying it from the standpoint of, there's folks out there that don't know that there's an opportunity to hear that child's name, that there's folks that are genuinely concerned about honoring your child, whoever you are, your child. And you should probably do it because you haven't been told that you should, and you probably should. It's very therapeutic. It's something that I think, if you've gone through, I ain't saying you have to do it every year, but I think if you've lost a child, doing this at least one time is very, very cathartic.
Yeah, I totally agree. The hearing of my baby's name every year, it truly just gives me life. And I always want to hear their names being called. So yeah, it's one of the reasons why we always go. And as the Wave of Light that we originally went to began to change a little bit, we were blessed with an opportunity to put on our own. And here we are. I just think it's such a blessing. The other blessing that comes from that is that it is in recording. It's totally recorded. And so when people are asking me what it is, yes, I can describe it. Ron can describe it, but we can also point them in a direction here. You can actually view what happens. And that's very helpful because, it takes a lot of money to put it on. So it's helpful in the way of, funding, because when the funders, when we're asking for money and they're like, you want us to fund what? And it's like,
Right.
here's the link. Yep. Here's the link. Please go take a look at it and see how many names are being called and help us to put this event on. Yes, very, very, very touching. The other thing though, for me, was that this was the first wave of light that Ron and I could not be together for. Because again, we're talking about pandemic. We were very limited on the amount of people that could be in the room. And so I went to handle the wave of light while Ron and the kids stayed home and watched it on television, on YouTube. And that was difficult, you know, because I had never been away from them for the wave of light. But one of the things that, and I'll let Ron tell you, you know, when I came home, they made sure to leave the candles lit for me, and I'll let him tell you about it, but that meant everything to me. And then we just played it again, because again, it was recorded, so I could still sit down, watch it again. They sat with me and watched it in its entirety. The kids were right there with me. It was just a blessing. So what was that like for you? Did that even affect you? Have we ever talked about that?
I don't think we kind of talked about it ahead of time, but I don't think we talked about it afterwards.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's different because you're used to it being a certain kind of way. You're used to it being, you know, us as a family. Initially it was you and I and Ethan. And then, of course, once the twins, the second set of twins came, Cameron and Caden, then it was all of us. Like, they never missed one either. They were at every one.
Yeah.
No matter what was happening, it was always, you know, a family unit. And at times, extensions of folks like, you know, your mom came a couple times. My mom and my dad have come.
Yeah.
So, you know, you get different variations and different extensions. And we've seen other people with huge followings of family members to come and support. So to not have, now I felt slightly different because I was basically with everybody except you.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I would have felt being by myself. I think being by myself would have been worse. But you know, to be able to at least be able to have the kids, you know, I found some solace in that. At least I got, you know, I have them, you know, and I let them light the candles. And you know, when everybody else, you know, was able to blow theirs out, I just said, no, we should leave those on for mommy, and we'll blow them out with mommy. You know, that way, even though she wasn't here with us, she'll at least still get to do something that's a part of the ceremony. We can do something together, you know, as a family. So, I mean, it was an adjustment. It was, you know, it was a lot that went into planning all of it too.
Yeah.
You know, the different interviews that we had to do, and then, you know, oh, we got to pick up the candles, and oh, we have to pick up the lanterns, and oh, we got to put these things together, and oh, we got to do the tags, and oh, now we got to put the tags on the lanterns with the candles. And then we have to put them all back in these boxes and get them over here. And so it was a lot.
Yeah.
So to watch the production of everything and the editing of the video portion of it, along with the live stream part, it was good. I thought it went over very well. So I was pretty pleased with it. And even though we weren't all able to be in the same place at the exact same time, I think we still managed to put together something great for other families, and still have an opportunity for us to, you know, I guess have a newer kind of experience with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't turn out too bad at all. And the video itself is absolutely stunning. Devin and his crew did an excellent job with the editing. Very, very pleased with it. So moving right along into the Toxic film, That was one of the things that, I mean, we did this before pandemic actually, but I just want to talk about some of the things that we have coming up with the Toxic Film. Now, the Toxic Film is something that the Peel Committee put together. It's a 30-minute short film about a day in the life of the Black woman and all the microaggressions that occur in her daily life during pregnancy that could cause her to go into labor a little bit early. And and she loses the baby, basically. She's delivering way too soon. Again, Devin Collins with Stimuli Film, he's the person that put this film together. He was the director and all the people that were behind him, because it's not like he's a one-man show, but all the people that were behind him, they did an excellent job putting this film together. And one of the things that we're doing, and you heard Nicole and I talk about this in a previous episode, one of the things that we are doing is we're going to have that viewing and have a panel discussion where Ron is sitting on the panel, because that's just what we do. I just throw him right out there like, babe, can you sit on this panel? Thanks. And he's always game for it. Isn't that right, babe?
Sure.
He's the best. And then you have Devin sitting on the panel as well. And then we have two wonderful, wonderful therapists, Danielle Goggins, who is our lead therapist for our wellness network. We call it OWN. And then Misty Ramos, who is an art therapist that I know from back when I first lost Christian and Jaden. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I just wanted to touch upon that because it's coming up really soon, you guys, and I just can't wait for you to hear the panel discussion. So we just wanted to set the stage for that. Ron, okay, we already did the panel discussion. So I just want to say, open up the floor to you. You don't have to spill any beans, but what was it like sitting on that panel?
I think this was my first virtual panel.
Mm-hmm.
Every other panel has been, in person. So it was just different from that. To me, it was just different from that standpoint. I mean, here I'm 12 years deep in this.
Yeah.
So being asked to sit on, I've sat on panels in front of 10 people. I've sat on panels in front of 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that none of it is somewhat intimidating. It's somewhat intimidating. This was a little less intimidating. However, I think by it being kind of an intimate setting, I think our answers were a little more intimate.
Yeah.
I think it was a little more involved in terms of, I don't know if it was preparation. I don't know if it was because of who else was in the room with us. I don't know for sure, but it was a little more of a personal touch or personal feeling.
Yeah. So what we did is we pulled the people together and we sat in a room together. We were hosted by the Cleveland Clinic, and we were in the room together doing the actual recording of the panel discussion. So we were, it's something to be said about being in the space with one another, being able to look into the eye of the other person talking. And yeah, I just think that I agree with what you're saying, that it was just very, very intimate. So the questions were personal, and so the answers were very personal. So yeah, we have that coming up in the next episode. So you'll get to hear the panel discussion as it happened. And we just can't wait for you to hear it. It's absolutely excellent. Ron, do you have anything that you want to add before we close down this episode?
No, not to add to the actual show. However, I would like to thank everybody who is listening. I hope and I ask that you will continue to support us. I hope and that you will continue to pass us on to other folks, especially those who may be in need of our specific abilities here on our podcast, as well as the different resources that we are in touch
with. Yes. Thank you. So I'd be remiss not to mention that you can catch us on the web, www.thecjp.org. Our Twitter handle and Instagram handle is both at Jaden Christian. So visit us on the website. You can find more information there. We take donations there as well. And on Instagram and Twitter, we're always tweeting and putting out information in that way as well. And we just started a YouTube page, so make sure you go and follow that. I'll link it on the website so that you can link from there. So we just want to thank you for joining us today. And until we meet again in the next episode, we hope you have a very blessed week. Thank you.